Hey folks, how's it going? Jovan Hutton Pulitzer here today. Thanks for joining in. You've got a Facebook broadcast, you got a YouTube broadcast, you have a Periscope broadcast, and you're right, just like Taylor said, this is about saving America. This is going to be one of the shows you're going to want to make sure you share, get people in on it. It's going to be jam-packed. I know people all around the world. Australia is joining in. We got Kentucky's joining in. And so there is all kinds of people out there, right, that are joining in to hear this information of what we're going to talk about. Of course, we're going to be talking about HR1, the bill HR1. We got Oklahoma in the house. Do me a favor, folks. Tell me where you're tuning in from. I see Tennessee, Ohio, Oklahoma, Kentucky, Maryland, Ireland, Australia. Thank you, guys. North Carolina. We're going to be talking about HR1. That's the voting bill, right? Basically, I call it huge rigged one because that's what it is, the huge rigged one. And this basically is something being watched all around the world. Everybody's interested in it. Everybody wants to make sure their vote counts because, very simple, if your vote doesn't count, America goes down. And if America goes down, then in fact, the whole world goes down. And nobody wants that to happen. Now, tonight, the comments are going to blow by very fast. And I see somebody's joining us from California. So it's changed from Californication to California. I get it. Southwest Ohio. Norway. Hey, Norway. Thanks for joining us. And so take some notes. It's a long URL, but just write down HR1. We're going to point you to it. All you have to do to prep for this broadcast is read all 789 pages of it. No, I'm actually just kidding you on it, but that's how long this bill is. And it's a bill of magical words that are full of shit. And to help us expose the full of shitdom on it, I got two guests that have been fighting this fight and are patriots on the fight. I'm going to let them, when I bring them in, just give out their own URLs so you can follow them on social media. And I'm going to let them share it with you one at a time because you're going to want to follow them besides following me. Bobby, go!
Hey, how are you? Bobby Piton. You can pull me up on YouTube, Gab, as well as Parler at Bobby Piton. And on Twitter, I am UAmerica333.
You've had to do that on Twitter how many times now?
Yeah, maybe sixth version, I think, right now.
It is absolutely nuts. Free speech is dead. Of course, social media has become socialist media, right? That's kind of the way it is. And now, so we got a little kick-ass bravado in this show. Let's do Susan, who's going to give you her very special Julius Italian. I'm going to kick your New York ass the way it should be done. Comments. Hey, Susan, how's it going there?
Is that how you see me? Okay.
I love that. You are the epitome of a power woman. Now, I look at the comments all the time when people see you. Somebody commented for Bobby. Damn it, Bobby. But somebody, basically, every time you come on, Susan, it is like the guy's going, oh, man, look at her smile. Oh, man, look at her lips. Oh, man, look at her hair. And so, of course, so there you go. You're right.
Go on.
But that's what it is. It gets pretty bad here, and what we're talking about is HR1, which is the voting bill, which I have dubbed HR1, which stands for huge rigged one, because that's exactly what it is. Now I'm going to set a tone for everybody. I want to show you something on my screen for a minute, but I want to set a tone for you so you kind of understand really what this is about and some of the stuff, because if you don't understand it in context, you won't understand just how big the rig is. I'm going to show you my screen here. I want to read this one to you first. Basically, I want you to understand that if we just went back in time 14 months, that's it. It's actually 16 months now. But if we went back in time 14 months ago, and in the state of Pennsylvania, if you sent in a ballot with a signature that didn't match the signature they had on file, they would actually take that signature and that vote, it would be discarded. However, if the person taking in that ballot counted the vote, it would be criminal fraud. Another example, 14 months ago in the state of Pennsylvania, if you sent in a ballot beyond election day, it would not be counted. And if it was counted, think about this, if it was counted, it would be fraud. If you sent in a ballot without a postal date stamped on it, it would not be counted. But if the tally system and the people working in the office counted it, it would be fraud. If you sent in a ballot that they couldn't tell what the date was, or if there was a smudge mark on the ink where they couldn't read it, it wouldn't be counted. And if somebody counted it, it would be fraud. All of those ballots in this last election in Pennsylvania were counted. There were totally unconstitutional legal changes made by officials, unquote, officially in Pennsylvania, but they let it stand. Bobby, is this the huge rigged one or what? Give me your top recap on this.
Well, a couple things, just taking it from the top. I do believe For the People Act is nothing more than a sophisticated doublespeak use of the language. So we agree there that they're hijacking the meaning of different words as well as each of the sections. On the surface, it looks as though they're doing a great thing. When you dig into the details, it's purely evil. I think that this bill is probably one of the most evil bills I think I've ever read. And I decided to kind of look at who's sponsoring this thing to get started. So the person that's sponsoring it, whose name is ahead of the Speaker of the House, Pelosi, is someone by the name of Sarbanes. Now, at first, I thought, wow, is this the same Sarbanes from Sarbanes-Oxley? No, right. It's his son. So his son is sponsoring this bill after his dad, who ran Maryland as a U.S. senator, he's been, or not running Maryland, but he's been a U.S. senator for over 30 years. What he did with Sarbanes-Oxley was he destroyed probably over half of the companies that used to be publicly traded went private because of the cost of trying to keep up with the regulatory environment as a result of Enron and WorldCom, where he passed this to crush small and mid-sized businesses in this country. So is it a shock that his son is following in his footsteps, trying to undermine the will of the people through this bill with Pelosi? So him, his son, Pelosi, and then this woman from that's a 13-term House rep from the 16th District of California, Susan Lofgren. So what's interesting about these three people, the three stooges as I would call them, is Susan Lofgren was involved as a staffer in the impeachment of Richard Nixon in the 70s. So think about that.
So you're saying she's Joe Biden's age and contemporary losing faculties of the brain, right?
Well, not just losing faculties, but this is how deep the swamp runs, that these people are recruited 30, 40, 50 years ago. They stay within Washington, and then they turn around, and there is no way in the world, this, as evil as this bill is, there is no way one of the three of them, or all three of them together, wrote this thing. This thing reads like a law book. Go pull it up. It's insane.
Absolutely long-term plan. Susan, let me ask you a question here. So give us your take, just the top level take before we dig into it. What do you think is the intent of this huge rigged one bill?
Can I just touch on a few things that were said, or?
Please do.
Okay, you said something, I have a whole different take on it, but you started out, Jovan, you said about, just a few years ago, if all of these violations, they would have been fraud and wouldn't have been counted. It's very interesting. And maybe the next level, I'll go into the MITRE that you actually exposed that report, but it's a lot deeper. And I'm going to show you a structure in how they worked with the local county. They worked with Twitter. And it's very important so that we see the structure. But very interesting, they put out 6 steps to a safe and trusted election: protect poll workers, promote early voting, empower mail-in voting, distribute safe and secure ballot boxes, fight election misinformation and disinformation, set expectations election season, not election night. Not one mention of making sure that the laws were being followed, that there was verification of the signatures, that the machines can't be hacked, that nothing else can be hacked. There was not one mention of any of the problems that we've experienced to protect. Okay, that's very important to understand, that this was clearly an agenda to ensure that the election was carried out in this manner. Now, Bobby Piton said something that was very powerful as well. He said about these people, these dinosaurs that have been there forever, and basically that they destroy things through the regulation. Now, Trump, he tried to get rid of regulation. What's dangerous about regulation? Regulation and licensing bureaus can be used to weaponize. They pick people who know the nooks and crannies. Remember, Schumer said there's 6 ways from Sunday that the intelligence bureau can get back at you, to Trump. So in other words, they know the system. They know how to weaponize the system. I want to bring in that system. I want to show you what they've done to set this up through Mitter and through, and I also want to expose the fact that they are this bill, this HR1, complete violation of the Constitution. And when you're ready, I'll go into those 2 aspects.
And folks, I would agree with Robin said. Robin said it's a takedown of American values. And there have been legal cases worldwide regarding these machines. A lot of countries have kicked these machines to the curb on their way to exactly a uniparty, right? And this is right. The devil takes care of his own. And HR, that's a good one, Jeffrey. You're right. Hijacking Republicans, because I want you to understand, one of the things I understand about this is the very holes that everybody has been exposing and the distrust that America has of the voting systems and the voting machines. It is literally making sure those machines are forever part of the system in use. So, Bobby, let's start here with you. Number 1 on your list. What's the first thing on your list that you think it's in people to understand about HR1?
Well, one of the things that's extremely disturbing is you can go in and attest who you are and sign something. They put in language that says you can just say, I am Bobby Piton. No ID. I just signed something that says that I'm Bobby Piton under perjury of law. Like, I can be charged with fraud if I'm not Bobby Piton, but I write it down and I can vote with just my signature with no proof of identification or anything. If you dig into this thing, this is why I'm saying it's such an evil document. That alone is incredibly disturbing. Now, when you tie that fact into the following other fact, if you are somebody who questions a voter without following the right protocol to have them prove who they are, the way I'm interpreting the language, and I am not an attorney, but someone needs to look at this, is I can go, that person, if they screw up and they don't ask someone properly if they're allowed to vote and who they are, they can get a year in prison or a $10,000 fine.
But let me. I want to show you something here, folks. I want to give a comparison because this drives Bobby's point home. He just said, if you mislabel, kind of sounds like the transgender stuff. Of course, there's a big movement for the trans living. Those are the people who really dead that vote, that feel like they're living. But you have to understand this signature thing. He just said if you talk to them wrong, they could fine you $10,000 or you could go to prison. Did you know destroying the ballots that are supposed to be kept according to U.S. Code 42-1983 and U.S. Code 20701 is a $1,000 fine? That's it. Let me show you what Bobby was talking about. Basically, in this law, this is one of the things they put out on the top, is it basically says promoting ability of voters by mail. And one of the things you'll find in it is prohibiting identification requirement as condition of obtaining a ballot. They basically have neutered anything that requires your ID, anything to verify who you are, anything that is required to make this legal. There are so many loopholes, and it's not even down to witnesses to notarize your statement, if in fact, or to notarize the fact that you voted properly. You're right. Shame on DC. They are literally trying to pull these stuff right over our eyes. And so, Bobby, as we go forward here on just this one fact, the danger, just the one thing, the most danger when you say, okay, we're now going into dangerous territory with no ID, what is it going to open up?
Well, I mean, the fact that they're trying to criminalize anybody who wants a fair process is the dangerous territory, because I do believe that can lead to a civil war. Because if people feel, and I don't use those words lightly, but if you make something so unjust and that there's no way for you to ensure that it's a fair process when voter integrity is part of national identity, who we are as a people is tied to our right to vote. I call it the constitutional glue. 2/3 of Americans agreed on the Constitution and every single amendment in the Constitution, the rule book. Now, if you allow people to vote that aren't supposed to be voting, and you get criminalized if you try to stop them from voting, then they can literally circumvent every single rule in the Constitution and destroy the entire rule book that we agreed to over the course of 240 years. And hence why I think it's so disturbing and so damning on so many levels that if this were to go through, I do believe that you are going to see an explosion in violence when people realize what they just stole everybody's rights, and that if you speak up, they have some kind of authority to arrest you for speaking up against their crimes.
Absolutely.
We would get arrested. Keep in mind, there's language in here that if this conversation right now, you and I for having this conversation, same with you, Susan, $100,000 fine and up to 5 years in jail.
Yeah.
They are legalizing the steal. You're exactly right, and they are weaponizing words. Susan, on this ID, I mean, even people in welfare have to have an ID to cash the check. You're going to have an ID to drive a car. You have to have an ID to fly an airplane. How do you feel about this?
I think the mistake that we're all making is we're playing into their game. This nearly 800-page bill is just a diversion to everything else that is going on. We are getting lost. Obviously, they don't have there's 10 senators, there's 10 Republicans that have to sign on. But I think
it's 60, right? They have to have 60. That's why they want to do a filibuster. No. And if I understand, it's the West Virginia guy. I always forget his name. It's coming down to him. That's kind of a fence sitter, right?
Well,
Manchin, that's right.
If I could just say a few things about, so we can keep our eye on the ball, because the game they're playing is we're all talking about the weeds here, all these laws. They can put in any laws in an 800-page bill. They can throw in anything. They can make anything worse if we allow this. It's the process that we must protect. And as Sandra Day O'Connor has said, and as had been held in the cases, the Constitution does not protect the sovereignty of states for the benefit of the states or state government, but rather for the protection of individuals. This is what makes our country great. This is about protecting the individual. That's what the Electoral College is about. That's what the Constitution is about. They have no authority under the 10th Amendment. And if they want to stretch the 14th or 15th, they have no authority. It's very narrow. They have no authority to expand the Constitution. And they recognized, our founders lived under the kings and the queens, and we have now Queen Pelosi and King Schumer. And, we are protected from that. If we enforce the Constitution and the laws, they cannot do it. But very important to understand that this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity for us to expose this system with the Republican senators if they wanted to. First of all, it's an opportunity to have hearings on the actual election, to talk about why does Canada have a hack-free electoral process? Why don't we have a hack-free electoral process? The Senate says nothing ever happened. Everyone says nothing ever happened. It was a great election. It was fair, but they never give a basis for that. They've never done a meaningful audit. They can't provide any basis. So now is our opportunity. Let's look at our election process. Can it be hacked? Yes, there's many ways, as you know, Jovan, that it can be hacked. And why should we have any of the ways? And if it can be hacked, how could anybody, Dominion or anyone, say, why aren't they curious whether it was hacked? Why isn't anybody curious? And why isn't anybody trying to make it better? So it's an opportunity to subpoena, to question Carter Casey, Mark Schneider, Kevin Runback, Dominion, to bring in the machines, to bring in the ballots, to address how do we make our election free and fair and ensure the integrity. That's their only job. That is their only job.
Absolutely. Folks, I want to share a few things with you. And if you haven't watched the series that Susan and I have been doing, talking about our judicial corruption problem, what you're hearing is people in the fight, but you're also hearing from an attorney that should be wearing a Superman or Wonder Woman's cape because she fights this corruption in New York City. It's all about unchecked power. I want to give you a few things just to set a direction here, and then I'm going to let everybody go. But one thing you need to know is I have already started traveling around the United States, several Secretary of States, etc., exposing what I call hacking the vote. And there are 50 different unique voting system vulnerabilities that have nothing to do with switching code or sending it out to servers, etc. That's why I focus on the ballots. It's hard to prove the fraud sometimes in codes. And so those of you that don't know, that's why I think we need to look at the ballots so you understand the truth about the ballots, because when we're looking at these wads of white paper, there are different ballots in there you can't tell. And this is what Scan the Ballots and Kinematic Artifacts is about, because this is a combination of legal ballots, counterfeit ballots, wrong format ballots, illegal scan ballots, overrun in sequence possibility, not folded in, even bad actor ballots. And we have to look at them in a new way with new audits than we've done before, because when you look at those white stacks of paper, you can't tell everything. But when you run them and have computers do it, so you're understanding textures, formats, etc., this is what you see. And in that, you see how this vote can actually be hacked on paper. I want to set up one thing. Bobby and Susan, look at this. Folks, I want to let you know that part of what they have in this is the acceptance of applications from individuals under the years of 18 years of age. And they basically have now criminalizing it that you cannot refuse a voter registration just because the person is not of the age to legally vote. You cannot refuse them signing up to vote just because they're not of the age to vote. How freaking stupid is that, Bobby? I mean, that's just like an admission of right there. Hey, look, we just want illegal voters, and we understand they're going to be illegal, but it's illegal for you to tell them they're illegal because we want them to legally vote.
Yeah, I mean, a couple other things that were extremely damning when you look into the fine print is there's a provision with regards to federal funding of prisons that if the prison system does not make sure that each person that is leaving the prison system, if they're not registered to vote, that the federal government might cut off funding to the prison system. Now, keep in mind, each state has its own rights, and those states can basically say you cannot vote until you pay back the debt to society that you rang up for the crimes that you committed. This would literally override those states' rights and allow them to step in and penalize them if they don't help felons set up their right to vote, even though they shouldn't be voting if they don't pay back their debt to society. One other thing I want to point out, Susan, you bring up a great point about them having to do something within the Senate as well as the House to stop this madness. But last year, there's 5 parts of the First Amendment. They attacked free speech. They shut that down. Nobody really spoke up in size across either chamber when all of them should have. They shut down our churches, our synagogues, our mosques, all these religious institutions. Nobody really fought on our behalf. Even the religious leaders didn't want to lose their tax-exempt status, and they let us down. Now they turn around and you look about freedom of press. They've been censoring any alternative media, so they went after that. Freedom of assembly, so that we could turn around and meet up and figure out what we need to do to fight back against our government. They shut that down unless you are rioting. And now when you bring in the last thing, which is in the First Amendment, we have a right to petition our government for changes. Well, if you can't meet at churches, if you can't speak freely, if you can't turn around and go to your churches, the churches, you can't go and publicly meet up in group settings, and then you have to wear masks, and then if you say something inappropriately on social media, they block you, and if you're a media outlet that doesn't follow the party line, they take you out, and so I don't have that same faith that you do that these folks are going to do the right thing at this point, because they had a layup. They should have, on any of those 5 things, they had a choice to step up and do something. And none of them, when I say none of them, there should have been a super majority on every single of one of those 5 violations. And I can't even imagine, I don't even remember just a simple majority, or yet alone just 25% of them speaking up.
Bobby,
So
I don't have any
problem.
faith in the system, but I have to. If you don't expose the system, you can't fix it and dismantle the system. There's no other choice. I mean, I don't have any faith in the people or the system. Trust me.
So as we go, let me share one thing. Let me just chime in here, guys. I left this on the screen. Sherry Gallagher says, "We demand paper ballots, plain and simple."
Exactly. Yeah.
I want to let you know one thing. This huge rigged one, HR1, wants to go all machines and electronic, no paper ballots. This stuff is absolutely upside down. Here's some more of the upside down. Take a look at this. Basically, what they want to do is Congress has decided if you're a criminal, you've been disparaged against. Well, there are 5.2 million Americans who cannot vote due to a felony conviction. And they're basically saying, hey, African Americans are disenfranchised at the rate 3.7 times greater than non-African Americans. Now, are they disenfranchised, or are they creating crimes 3.7 times more than anybody else? But you look at these states, a lot of these very tough conservative states with views, they basically try to say, well, they're disenfranchised, and it goes back to the Jim Crow era, and there's racial disparity. I hate this racial thing. It's a joke, and here's why it's a joke. You and I can have the same exact DNA, and you be a person of color and me not. DNA is the real tell, because we're all human. DNA has proved there isn't the race crap. Susan, what do you think about allowing felons to vote?
Obviously, there's a lot in this bill. I don't agree that under the 15th or 14th Amendment, there's any disenfranchisement, that we should enable. It's just another tactic that they're using. But I think what we need to focus on is that, look, for instance, what I think is that they are ensuring that the electronic voting machines continue. Even in the Mitter report, MITRE, the one that you did a whole show on, they
Right.
said, oh, the machines that we have, they're getting outdated. We got to get more. And then Dominion actually wrote there was an article where they praised they praised the MITRE MITR report. So basically, we have to look at this agency because it's federally funded for research and development. And remember what I told you, that it's not a murder unless an official office or judge says it's a murder. If it's a murder and the court says it's a suicide, it's a suicide. So it's not, the election is not stolen unless an official court, FBI, or agency that is federally funded to give an appearance of neutrality and official reporting says that it was stolen. So you have to look at, I mean, it's incredible if you read one of the programs that they have called Squint, that they set this up back in February of 2020, that they said that they wanted to immediately generate reports that can be shared with peers to strengthen a takedown request to social media channels. They wanted to work with the county levels. That means the Arizona county, that means Georgia county. What were the problems that we faced? County level problems, yet they are working under this Squint program. You need to look at this. They are working with the counties, and they're saying that if you have a problem, a question, if there's disinformation about the election, right away, if it's posted on social media, let us know, or let YouTube know. Now, Dr. Shiver, he was complaining that his, that the government told Twitter to take down his truthful information regarding his election, and they did. So it comes from programs like this. Everyone, I would recommend that you look at MITRE, MITRE, and look at the Squint program. Look at the
well, you know what Squint stands for. It means you have to look at it like this. It's designed to squint at, and you're basically thinking in their mind, what the fuck?
Yeah, but
that's where Squint comes from.
What you see here, Jovan, is you see the whole infrastructure of how this election happened, the social media, the counties, how everything has been organized within a framework and it was written about before the election ever happened. I mean, this is a really smoking gun. And then there's Kevin Runback. What they want is a tight fist of control. They want, like Kevin Runback, he's somebody that can offer us a lot of information. There was a video that he had put out where he even admitted about that the voter registration was hacked. He admitted that. He mailed out over 18 to 20 million ballots. He prints out 100,000 ballots on demand. He printed out 40 million ballots. He has contracts in 20 different states. He contracted with Dominion in Georgia to print out 1 million ballots there. Why is it just a tight fist of people controlling everything, and it all seems to be interrelated? So when MITRE was doing their report, why didn't they question Mr. Runback, who admits to all that the voter rolls haven't been cleaned? And by the way, this bill doesn't want you to ever clean the voter rolls, which, as we saw in Michigan, 177,000 taken off, and the margin was 155,000. So do you understand? It's a tight fist of power that they want. That's why they want it all electronically. They want to control our votes. They want to control us. And that's completely against the Constitution. And no, I have no faith in the people, and I have no faith but I do have beliefs that the laws can get us through this if we apply them, enforce them, and we also expose all of this information, and we dismantle this infrastructure. It's so, a very tight fist of people.
It is corrupt because we have so many people in it, and they're forgetting we the people, just like people in Arizona got upset for having the spotlight put on them. Bobby, let's start to dismantle this, brother. if you could start ticking them off and say we can't get every one of them, what's the most dangerous part of this HR1? Where would you start?
Well, I think what we need to do to start with, dismantling it and getting the U.S. Senate, all of them, Democrats and Republicans alike, we need to mobilize and let them know under no circumstances can this be passed. And we should get a supermajority of senators to kill this and send a loud message to the American people and to the world that this won't go through. The other thing we should start to do that is extremely important that we run this simultaneously is we don't watch sporting events in this country where the referee and the teams are meeting up in the middle of the game to decide how a play should be called. We, the people, should take the entire function of voting away from all political parties. We should create our own voting infrastructure, and we invite viable candidates to be able to use that infrastructure that is not funded by the government, but it's funded by the people to put an end to this insanity where we let the inmates run the asylum. They should have no right to look at anything with regards to the outcome. We, the people, are the referees, and we need to create a mechanism that these systems are audited in real time afterwards, a ticker tape of sorts. And I said, we can use some of the existing infrastructure, which isn't costly. Passports, they have RFID tags in them. Every American should have a passport. That's the way they get to vote. Now, all of a sudden, we turn around, we have 17 million people, 1 out of every 20 of us that served in the military. They can be at the voting stations to make sure with other Americans that legitimate people are there voting. Paper ballots, there's 3,143 precincts in this country. We should have a water-sealed blockchain number on the ballot for each precinct, and only the number of precincts, only the number of people in that precinct, that's the maximum amount of ballots that are printed.
But how are you going to implement it?
You implement it. Hey, I got news for you.
Yeah.
There's a guy named Gandhi who shut down India, okay, peacefully. There's a guy named MLK, okay? He changed this country peacefully. The way you implement it is you need to have tens of millions of Americans say, we are taking the damn voting system over. We don't trust you. Right. You don't deserve to be trusted. What you're suggesting is I go to the airport, I don't have an ID, I sign a piece of paper that says who I am, I give it to the desk, and I say, I bought a ticket, this is who I say I am. Oh, and if you try to make me prove that I'm not who I say I am, and you don't follow the letter of the law, you're going to jail for a year. That's what they're doing. So to answer your question, the time for sitting around and trying to lobby these people, we have to do that with the Senate, but we have to simultaneously hedge our bets, organize protests across the country, and fight with regards to throw all these bums out and take the voting systems back over and controlled by the people. Now, that's an interesting problem to have, because we need to have an institution in this country that is national in scope that we can use immediately. Now, the government is a federal national institution. What's an institution that is national that people trust? Me personally, the one institution that I trust more than any function of government right now is the NSA. They've got the dirt on everybody. And I think that we should start with the NSA should be the one that helps build a private sector solution to confirming who the hell is real. If anybody in this country and worldwide knows who is real, they already know. So let's start with a baton.
But there's a clock that is ticking, and there's immediate action, and these are maybe a little bit longer.
Maybe we should be writing the NSA. Maybe every American should write the NSA. The leadership of the NSA.
But right now, we have a Senate hearing on this, and we need to make sure that the senators do what's right, that they go and get the information regarding.
When did they do what was right in the past year?
The printing of the ballots.
When did they do what was right last year?
I'm sorry?
when all five of our constitutional
Yes,
rights.
I understand. But right now there's a hearing, and we should, if the people have the power to organize, well, Donald Trump and the GOP should insist, if they really are interested in election integrity, to use this as an opportunity. Many things could be true at the same time, and we could do everything, but we have to focus on what we have.
Then organize a rally to the U.S. Senate immediately with 2 million people showing up to say this is bullshit. I mean, you said immediate action. They held something on January 6th. Jovan,
Right.
get it set up. 2 million people.
Right.
So let me give you my take on some of this. It's very interesting. A couple of days ago, I actually had to have a discussion with the CIA, and it was very interesting because they were handing me photos, which is their Face ID program that was IDing a bunch of patriots, of which I was in the middle of, and it's their program mapping my face, and they know who I am and the whole bit. And so there was a discussion about it. Right, they know everything, they see everything. The second part I want to tell people is something that I believe in my heart. This is a very long game, not a short game. See, we all think of this as it's a very, very, very short game that we're playing here, and we got to stand up and fight. There's a lot of comments in the comments that talk about get your guns, show up. I want to say something to you. There's a reason I don't put those on the screen. And the reason I don't put them on the screen is because I know part of this long game is to get people pissed off. I know there are 1 million Chinese digital soldiers fucking with our heads, trolling us on social media, planting those seeds. I know they try to get them into these broadcasts, doing a favor for the Twitters and Facebooks of the world to get the broadcast canned. But more importantly, I also think part of this orchestration is get people off in the states where you can carry, show up for one reason, so they can take away our Second Amendment right. We can organize, but you have to do it right. Part of the process is legally and getting educated, and part of the process is showing up. It's not hard to pull the people together, because I basically think there's 85 million Americans in the United States worried about their vote if it's going to count. I think if another 80 million voted on the other side, I think half of those are like my family, that they're FDR Democrats, because FDR brought them out of the Great Depression. My dad's one of like 1,600 kids kind of thing, right? And so they worship FDR, never question it. That's just the way you were raised. But they too don't want votes compromised and be done in the steel. We have to be thinking long term. So the answer is kind of right here in this, that we must organize, we must get together. I'm 100% for our own voting systems. There is no reason it should be controlled by the very people who benefit from the outcome and benefit from granting $100 million, $200 million, $300 million contracts to these companies and their machines. But see, this is the problem, folks, and this is why we're talking about it. On this one thing, the huge rig one, otherwise known as HR1, it's now going to the Senate. And if you understand the compromise in the system, you got to understand how this is played. It needs 60 votes, but that's why they want to get rid of the filibuster, because then they can get it passed with lesser votes. Bobby, how do you feel about that? What do you think is going to happen when it gets over to the Senate?
Well, I mean, once they kind of go down that path of eliminating the filibuster, it'll permanently change, all these laws going forward in this country, and you kind of defeat the check on the insanity of the House by the Senate. With these laws, the Senate is supposed to be the cooler heads prevail. The more, I guess you can say. Some of the people that are deemed to be more in tune or deeper understanding of the issues than the House. The House is more of individuals that, are the frontline workers, the middle managers, and the senators are supposed to be the people that know how the whole strategy and the whole board works. So I do think they should tread lightly, and they should think about the long-term negative ramifications for either party that will no longer force them to both compromise together. So I guess what I'm saying is, if they do a simple majority and they end the filibuster, then it's just a uniparty. We have, it's over. So
That's what I've been telling senators and stuff.
the moment that filibuster's ended, we've lost, folks. Then we've been played big time.
I told people that is,
and so
when you understand the voting here, and if we don't do something to give people confidence and to keep checks and measures in, then what happens is these wimpy rhinos, like in Arizona, that aren't standing the ground, they're the next people out in the next election. Then we have a uniparty. And when we have a uniparty, there's no need to rig a vote. There's no need to have a compromised machine for two reasons. You own it and nobody will vote again. Susan, how do you feel about that topic?
I feel that I agree with you that this is really not a Republican and Democrat issue. Report today, 61 to 69% Republicans believe that Joe Biden did not win fairly. 36% of independents and 34% of all believe that. This is about national security. This is about the integrity of our Constitution, integrity of our courts, integrity of our government. And so I agree 100% that I do think, we basically, for the most part, it has evidence that we do have a uniparty in many respects, because the people who didn't protect the counties and the people who didn't ensure that we had meaningful audits, or didn't even ensure that the ballots were held, the custody chain was followed, nothing. I mean, so I think that we very much do have a uniparty to some extent. So I think if we are united under one umbrella with, I think, President Trump, if he wants any chance of getting in, if the GOP wants any chance of getting in, they have to unite. They have to use their power now. They have to use it local, county. They should impress upon the senators that they need to bring these people in who have printed the ballots, who have controlled the machines, who have controlled the reports on the election. They need to address this before the people. Okay, this is not about politics. This is about our national security.
Let's look at one other topic here. I put this up, but I want to explain part of the issue in this last 2020 election. That was, many things happened the first time in history. As I've told people, we broke many history records. Most people ever that supposedly voted. The most money ever spent in any campaign years, $14 billion for that year. That's more than many decades combined. We printed more mail-in ballots than we printed many election cycles for decades together, delivered more of them, processed more of them, and counted more of them. And basically what they're saying is, look, you don't have to have any ID to actually cast that ballot, which takes it to the next level. Bobby, personally, how do you feel about mail-in ballots? Would you keep them in any form?
I think that the only reason you should be allowed to do a mail-in ballot is if you are not within, whatever, 10 miles of your legal residence. So you better be out of state, out of the country, serving in our military, but you should not be able to vote through mail-in ballot unless you meet a higher standard, period. With regards to people that said, well, Bobby, I'm scared. I want to be able to be safe when I vote. Well, if those masks are effective, then you should have no problem going to vote in with those masks. And you can vote with the damn masks. Now, if you still have a problem voting because you're disabled, for example, and you can prove it through medical reasons, not just because you're mentally disabled in your own mind and you're trying to just, pull a fast one on the system, no problem. You have a military veteran and you have a normal citizen, go to that person's house and bring them a ballot and be the notaries on that signature for that ballot. So for those circumstances, that's how it should be done. But this whole idea that we should turn it into 15 days or we should turn it into a month of voting is absolutely preposterous. One day, make it July 4th. We should change the voting of the nation to July 4th, make it a holiday. Everybody goes and votes, and then has some barbecue, hot dogs, watermelon, all the classic American favorites. And then guess what? We can all celebrate with some fireworks when the results come in and tie it all together.
I love that. Susan, what would you do? How do you feel about mail-in ballots and the usefulness of them as they are now just being given out like welfare checks?
Listen, I know a lot of elderly, sick people all my life. And when they had to get something notarized or go to the bank or do something, they did it. And I know many people today, when they go shopping, they're elderly, they had cancer, they have diabetes, they have heart attacks. They managed to go out. I bet most of these people who got the mail-in ballots, I would say most of them, went out when they wanted to go out. They put their mask on and they did it. They could have gone out for the vote. But there's 1,000,001 ways that they could accommodate people without changing our voting system. But it was like unraveling a dress. You pull the thread until there's no dress left. They basically they changed the verification. They changed, all the different rules of counting after, as you pointed out. So this is just another manifestation to make it permanent. And they use their, like you said, Bobby, in the beginning of this program, they use the language. They call this, they're very good with PR, with their language, for the People's Act. And Michelle Obama says, I urge the Senate to follow suit. Nothing is more important to our democracy than safeguarding our right to vote. Well, you're not safeguarding your right to vote. What you're doing is you are not safeguarding the individual's vote. You are drowning out the votes, and you are creating a permanent system that can be rigged without recourse.
So we've got a little less than 8 minutes left. Bobby, half of that's yours. What's your closing salvo here you want everybody to know?
Well, I think the key that we have, the key to getting through all this is everybody needs to continue to be motivated, mobilized, and take the steps necessary to take over the voting process. It's not. I agree with you that this is a long game. This isn't going to happen overnight. But right now, we are on the ropes as a society. We, the people, are on the ropes. So if we don't start hitting back some way, and I agree, no violence, no guns, none of that's necessary. We outnumber the people in the Congress. There's 616,000 Americans for every one member of Congress, and there's 47,000 Americans for every elected official in this country. We don't need to mobilize 10%, even 1%. Let's just mobilize 1/10 of 1%. If we can get 47 Americans for every 47,000 people to get their shit together and organize in each respective state, we can make a big difference. That's why, I've done a lot of work in setting this up in my front here in Illinois. People that want to find out more, send me an email or go to preactiveinvestments.com and fill out the political newsletter portion. It's free. And right now I have about 5,000 people on the mailing list and maybe about 1,000 volunteers. I want to try to build anywhere from 3,000 to 10,000 volunteers across the country. We come up with ways to standardize the data, share all the findings with everybody, and then come up with ways in which we bypass them trying to censor us, silence us, and take away our rights, because we are the last line of defense. I do not believe that someone's going to come out of the woodwork and save us. It's up to us. It's up to we, the people. This is a battle between good and evil, and right now we are losing, folks. And so we better step it up. And we only need 1 in 1,000 of us to step up to outnumber them 47 to 1, 616 to 1.
Absolutely. Susan, 3
Yes.
minutes, your final salvo. What would you tell the people? What's your plan?
I think that it's a sprint and a marathon. I think you have to do a few things. One is focus on what's happening now that you can have power over. I agree with both of you that we need a long-term strategy, which is also part and parcel of a short-term immediate strategy. Obviously, we need to not allow them to play with language calling this for the People Act. We shouldn't follow that. We should explain like you did what it's all about. We should look at the infrastructure. We should dismantle how they were able to create this problem to begin with. We need to focus on that. I'm sorry, but that is a very important part of solving this, is to focus on who, what, and where in the details so that we can address it. We need to be united. We need to have power. The power would come from if we have the GOP, if we have Donald Trump, if we have the resources and we're united and we're focused on it. But, it's interesting to note that Trump, the law and order president, he didn't want to federalize the election. Everyone said, please federalize it. Make sure that, the ballots were watermarked, or that, it had to be a certain way. But he didn't want to. He left everything for the states. He followed the Constitution, which was to leave the states have their own power. But unfortunately, at the county and local levels, they were able to enable these, rule changes, blocking people from actually seeing the vote. They didn't let a crisis go to waste by using the pandemic as an excuse. And I don't think we were on top of that enough in each state, or we deferred to people that we thought were Republicans and that were taking care of the situation. And unfortunately, that was not the case. But there are no simple fixes. But I think that it's very important what's going on now with this bill, and that we should have an outline of all the things that the senators could do to address this bill. I mean, just to go through a few things, like you said, they force internet-only registration, remove Social Security number requirements, provide motor vehicle registration for everyone, create nationwide same-day registration, allow children and felons to vote, legalize nationwide ballot harvesting. There's nothing here that would safeguard our vote. So we're doing everything we can, but what we're not doing is focusing enough, and we're not united enough.
So, folks, in giving my last word here, I want to use something that I actually learned from Susan and that Bobby said earlier in the broadcast. Nobody's going to come riding in on a white horse to save us. That is not going to happen. It's down to, if you want just us, it's just us. And that's the reality of it. We must organize. We must talk. We must share. We must debate. That is the way this works. We bought into the lie that we shouldn't talk about politics and religion with family and friends or at the dinner table. And that made it where nobody can get along and everybody gets their feelings hurt. Now, there is so much in this huge rigged one known as HR1, or this horrible rigged one, that it's almost 800 pages long. And they didn't whip that out just since the election. That's been the plan all along on the back burners. In short, they're talking about legalizing every loophole we now know existed in the system. That's the number one thing. You need to get involved. You need to start talking. You can share this feed right now all over and get people on this subject. We're going to continue doing our series on the corrupt courts with Susan. You're going to hear from Bobby more in the future, stuff going on. We're going to bring you these people on the front lines. But if you want to do something right now, remember, if you want justice, it's just us, folks. And you've got to not be afraid to share this stuff and to get involved. So do me a favor, do us all a favor. Please share this to get people involved and talking about it. A lot of good ideas come from here, but it starts from ideas, talking, and dialogue. Thank you all, folks. Take care. Love you. Bye.